What you tried to destroy only made us stronger.
This whole nightmare started when my wife Linda decided to blow up our 7-year marriage on a random Tuesday night. I was under the hood of a customer's transmission in my garage when she waltzed in wearing that expression that made my stomach drop. The look that meant she'd been scheming behind my back for God knows how long. She didn't bother with small talk or explanations, just dropped the bombshell. "I'm divorcing you, Mike, and here's exactly how this is going down." She slammed down this thick manila envelope stuffed with legal documents across my workbench like she was dealing blackjack. Turns out she'd already been consulting with Hamilton, Brooks, and Associates. You know, that ridiculously expensive firm downtown with the fancy marble lobby where lawyers bill $600 an hour just to shake your hand. The paperwork was brutal. She wanted our house, my deceased grandmother's house that had been in our family for 4 decades, plus 80% of our combined retirement savings and monthly alimony payments of $3,000 for life. When I tried explaining that this house represented 40 years of family memories, that my grandmother specifically willed it to me because she trusted me to preserve what she'd built, Linda actually started laughing. Not chuckling, full-on belly laughing like I'd told the funniest joke she'd ever heard. "Your sentimental BS doesn't override property law, Mike," she said, reorganizing her documents with theatrical precision. "We've been married 7 years. Colorado recognizes marital property rights, and I'm legally entitled to my fair portion of our assets." Every single word sounded rehearsed, like her attorney had spent hours coaching her on exactly what to say to inflict maximum psychological damage while staying within legal boundaries. Then came her ultimatum, delivered with the confidence of someone who'd calculated every possible angle. "Here's your choice, Mike. You can sign these papers right now and we'll handle this amicably, or you can try fighting me in court and lose absolutely everything anyway, just with the added bonus of massive legal bills you definitely can't afford." She wasn't wrong about my financial situation. Running a small automotive repair shop pays decent money, but nothing close to lawyer money. The kind of legal representation needed to challenge her demands would cost more than I earned in an entire year. She'd done her homework, researched my limitations, and was weaponizing my blue-collar income against me. "Face reality, Mike," she continued, tapping her perfectly manicured nails against my workbench. "You fix cars for a living. You work with your hands. You're skilled at what you do, but let's be honest about your limitations. You can't possibly afford the kind of legal firepower needed to go up against Hamilton, Brooks Associates. Their attorneys devour guys like you for breakfast and bill their clients for the privilege." The smugness in her voice was unlike anything I'd ever heard from the woman I'd married. This wasn't the person who used to bring me sandwiches while I worked late, who'd curl up beside me on Sunday mornings talking about growing old together. This was someone who'd calculated every angle and decided I was disposable. "So what's it going to be?" she asked with fake sympathy. "Are you going to be smart about this and sign, or are you going to make both our lives more complicated with some pathetic attempt at resistance that you absolutely cannot win?" I stared at her for what felt like forever. This woman who'd shared my bed for 7 years, who knew my routines, my insecurities, my financial constraints better than anyone alive. She'd prepared for every possible response except one thing she couldn't have known about. I set down my wrench and looked her straight in the eyes. "You're absolutely right," I said. Her smile spread across her face like spilled motor oil. She actually looked relieved, maybe even disappointed that I'd surrendered so easily. "I knew you'd see reason eventually," she said, gathering her papers with satisfied efficiency. "You're practical, Mike. It's actually one of the things I respected about you. You understand when you're outgunned." After she left, I stood alone in my garage, surrounded by the smell of engine grease and 7 years of marriage crumbling around me. She was completely correct about my financial limitations, about the impossibility of matching her legal resources, about the mathematical certainty of my defeat. She'd calculated everything perfectly, except for one variable she couldn't possibly have anticipated. There was someone in my family she'd never met, someone I hadn't spoken to in 8 years due to a catastrophic family dispute. Someone whose very existence would transform her flawless strategy into a devastating miscalculation. The person Linda didn't know about was my cousin Alex, and there was a damn good reason she'd never encountered him. 8 years ago, Alex and I had inherited our grandfather's vintage automobile restoration business together, a legacy that had defined 3 generations of our family. Our grandfather had started the operation in 1968 with nothing but basic tools, determination, and absolute devotion to bringing classic American muscle cars back to their original specifications. I wanted to preserve everything exactly as grandfather had established it. The original Colfax Avenue location, the hand-painted signage he'd created personally, the meticulous restoration techniques he'd taught us during childhood summers spent learning about engines and craftsmanship. Alex viewed the business through the cold lens of someone who'd spent 4 years in law school learning to evaluate everything in terms of profit margins rather than memories and tradition. "Mike, this is prime commercial real estate we're sitting on," he'd argued during our final partnership meeting. "We could sell this property to developers, liquidate the vintage parts inventory, and each walk away with $400,000. That's serious capital, enough to invest properly and build actual wealth instead of playing with antique cars like we're still kids." I'd looked at him across grandfather's original workbench, the same one where he taught us both to identify transmission components before we could properly tie our shoes. "This isn't about money, Alex. This is about family heritage, about preserving something grandfather spent his entire adult life building. These aren't just vintage cars. They're pieces of American automotive history, and we're the craftsmen who resurrect them." Alex's expression had hardened into the ruthless mask I'd seen him wear during courtroom proceedings. Family heritage doesn't pay mortgages or fund retirement accounts, Mike. Sentimental value is exactly that. Sentimental. It has zero market value, zero practical application in the real world. Grandfather's dead. His dreams died with him. We need to be intelligent about our inheritance. The argument escalated from professional disagreement to personal attacks, with Alex calling me naive and backwards while I accused him of being a soulless opportunist who'd forgotten his roots. "You've spent so much time in those corporate law offices that you've completely forgotten what actually matters," I'd shouted. "Not everything in existence can be reduced to quarterly earnings and profit optimization. Some things deserve preservation because they represent something more significant than money." Alex's response was swift and brutal, and that's precisely why you'll always be working with your hands while I'm building a legitimate career. "You're trapped in the past, Mike. Grandfather's business model died with the 20th century. I'm not letting your romantic nostalgia destroy my financial future." We divided the business assets through lawyers, splitting everything down the middle except the one thing that couldn't be divided: our relationship. Alex took his portion of the parts inventory and equipment, then established his own prestigious law practice specializing in complex divorce litigation for Colorado's wealthiest clients. I kept the original shop and continued the restoration business exactly as grandfather had envisioned. The family fractured along predictable lines, with older relatives supporting my preservation of tradition, while younger cousins admired Alex's financial success and legal reputation. Holiday gatherings became exercises in diplomatic navigation, with family members choosing sides and avoiding topics that might reignite the conflict. Linda had witnessed the aftermath when she'd asked about family dynamics early in our relationship. "Why doesn't your cousin Alex ever attend Christmas dinner?" she'd inquired innocently. I'd explained the situation briefly, describing it as an irreconcilable business disagreement that had permanently damaged our relationship. What I hadn't explained, and what Linda couldn't have understood, was the depth of Alex's protective instincts regarding family threats. Despite our personal conflict, Alex had inherited the same fierce loyalty that ran through our grandfather's bloodline, the kind that could transform potential enemies into allies when external forces threatened family members. Linda had filed Alex away as a neutralized threat, someone permanently severed from my life who could never be summoned for assistance. She'd calculated correctly that I couldn't afford Alex's legal fees, which started at $900 per hour and escalated rapidly for complex cases. What she hadn't calculated was that family loyalty operates by different rules than business relationships, and that some obligations can't be measured in billable hours. Alex's reputation in Colorado's legal community was both legendary and terrifying. Other attorneys whispered stories about his courtroom tactics, his ability to uncover buried secrets, his willingness to completely destroy opponents who underestimated his investigative capabilities. He'd built his practice by accepting cases other lawyers wouldn't touch, representing clients in high-stakes divorces where millions of dollars and family empires hung in the balance. For 4 days after Linda's ultimatum, I barely managed 3 hours of sleep nightly. Thursday morning, staring at my reflection while shaving, I realized I had only one remaining option, one person who possessed both the legal expertise and financial resources to challenge Linda's strategy. My hands actually trembled as I scrolled through old contacts until I found Alex's private number, the one I deleted and restored countless times over 8 years, but never had the courage to use. I'd rehearsed this conversation hundreds of times in my head, preparing for immediate rejection, harsh words about past grievances, or simply being disconnected without explanation. The phone rang twice before Alex's familiar voice answered. Professional but curious. "This is Alex Rodriguez." The sound of my cousin's voice after 8 years of silence hit me harder than expected. "Alex, it's Mike. I know we haven't talked since the business situation, but I need help. Legal help." There was a pause that felt like an eternity. I could practically hear him calculating, trying to determine if this was some kind of peace offering or desperate manipulation. "What kind of legal help?" he asked cautiously. I poured out the entire story. Linda's divorce demands, her high-powered attorney, her threats about my inability to afford adequate representation, her smug certainty that she'd calculated every angle perfectly. I explained about the house, about grandmother's legacy, about the impossibly unfair settlement terms that would leave me financially destroyed while rewarding Linda for abandoning our marriage. She specifically said I couldn't afford the kind of legal firepower needed to challenge her demands, I continued, my voice cracking. "She's right about the money, Alex. I can't pay $900 an hour for representation. I can barely afford to miss work for court appearances." The silence stretched between us, filled with 8 years of unresolved anger and family loyalty warring against personal pride. When Alex finally spoke, his voice had transformed from cautious professionalism to something that sounded dangerously protective. "What's her attorney's name?" he asked with sudden intensity. "Hamilton, Brooks Associates. The big firm downtown with the marble lobby." Alex actually laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. "Richard Hamilton. I've obliterated him in court 4 times over the past 3 years. His reputation is built on intimidating people who can't fight back. But he collapses like a house of cards when facing legitimate opposition." I could hear something shifting in Alex's tone, the cold calculation that had made him legendary in Colorado's legal community. "Oh, when's your preliminary hearing?" "Next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Downtown courthouse? Judge Peterson's courtroom." Alex was quiet for another moment, and I could practically hear him rearranging his schedule, prioritizing this family crisis over whatever high-paying corporate clients usually demanded his attention. "Mike, listen carefully. Don't contact Linda or her attorney. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to any meetings. Don't even respond to their phone calls. From this moment forward, all communication goes through me." The relief in my voice was impossible to hide. "Alex, I can't afford your rates. $900 an hour for however many months this takes. It's just not financially possible on a mechanic's salary." "We'll figure that out later," he said firmly. "Right now, your wife thinks she's got you cornered because you can't afford proper representation. She's about to learn that family loyalty doesn't operate according to billable hour structures." There was something in his voice I hadn't heard since we were kids working alongside grandfather in the shop. Protective determination mixed with barely controlled anger at someone who'd threatened family. "Be at the courthouse Wednesday at 1:30. Wear your best suit and try to look defeated. Let Linda think she's already won. I want her confident and unprepared when I walk into that courtroom." Wednesday morning arrived with crisp Denver autumn air that usually made me feel optimistic about new beginnings, but today carried the weight of everything I stood to lose. I dressed carefully in my only decent suit, navy blue, purchased for our wedding 7 years ago and worn maybe 6 times since. I needed to look defeated, overwhelmed like a simple mechanic who'd stumbled into a legal arena far beyond his understanding or capabilities. The drive downtown took me through neighborhoods where Linda and I used to walk on Sunday afternoons, past restaurants where we'd celebrated anniversaries, through the life we'd built together before she decided I wasn't enough for her evolving ambitions. The courthouse lobby buzzed with familiar energy. Attorneys in expensive suits consulting with nervous clients, court reporters wheeling equipment between floors, families like mine caught in the machinery of a system that reduced love and commitment to asset division and financial calculations. Linda arrived at exactly 2 p.m. looking like she'd stepped out of a legal drama. Her power suit was immaculate charcoal gray, her hair professionally styled, her makeup applied with the precision of someone who understood that appearances mattered in courtrooms. Behind her walked Richard Hamilton, the silver-haired attorney whose reputation Linda had used to intimidate me into submission. He carried himself with arrogant confidence, his expensive briefcase swinging casually as he surveyed the courtroom like a hunter assessing territory. Linda spotted me immediately and offered a smile that managed to be both sympathetic and condescending. She'd probably rehearsed that expression, practicing looking gracious in victory while her attorney dismantled my pathetic attempts at resistance. Hamilton glanced in my direction with barely concealed amusement, clearly viewing me as another unfortunate sufferer of his legal expertise rather than legitimate opposition. They took their seats at the plaintiff's table, spreading documents with theatrical efficiency, while Linda whispered instructions to her attorney, probably explaining how she'd already broken down my psychological defenses through superior strategy and financial pressure. Judge Peterson called our case, and I walked to the defense table alone with a folder of simple papers I'd prepared myself. The judge, a stern woman in her 50s with the tired look of someone who had handled thousands of divorces, scanned her docket while Hamilton arranged his files for what he clearly thought would be a quick, easy win. Your Honor, Hamilton began with smooth authority, this is a simple divorce case. Both parties have already agreed on how to divide assets. My client has prepared full settlement papers so we can move this along without delay. Linda nodded, her performance polished, while I sat quietly, trying to look knockin'. Judge Peterson was about to respond when the doors swung open hard enough to make everyone turn. Alex walked in wearing a sharp charcoal suit worth more than I made in a month. The energy in the room shifted instantly, from routine hearing to courtroom battle. I had forgotten how he could own a room just by walking into it. His posture, his look, the way other lawyers straightened in their chairs and whispered, it all announced his presence. He came to my table with steady, deliberate steps, every move showing authority and controlled force. Linda's reaction was instant. Her confident smile cracked, then collapsed as she realized what this meant. This wasn't part of her plan, and she knew it. Hamilton's smug look turned into confusion, then panic as he recognized Alex and understood his easy win had just turned into a war. Alex set his briefcase down, placed a steady hand on my shoulder, part comfort, part warning, and turned toward them with a cold smile. Your Honor, Alex Rodriguez, counsel for the defense, he said. Sorry for the late entrance, but I wanted to make sure my cousin had proper representation today. The words hit the courtroom like a gavel. Alex looked straight at Linda with eyes that cut, then spoke the line that crushed her strategy completely. He doesn't have to pay me, he's family. The color drained from Linda's face so fast I thought she might faint. Her mouth opened, but no words came. Hamilton scrambled through his papers as if he could somehow find a way out. Judge Peterson raised one eyebrow, looking almost amused. She clearly knew Alex's reputation, and realized this would be far more interesting than the dull property split she had expected. Linda's plan, built on my being alone and unable to afford real defense, had just been destroyed by the one thing she never saw coming: family loyalty that didn't follow the usual rules of money or fees. Within 3 days of our court hearing, Alex shifted from protective cousin back into the fierce attorney who built his name crushing rivals in Colorado's hardest divorce cases. My phone buzzed nonstop with updates that sounded like battle reports. Mike, I filed wide-ranging discovery requests for full financial disclosure from Linda, Alex said during our first planning session at his downtown office. Bank records, credit history, work files, tax returns for 5 years, everything. If she's hiding money or making secret plans, we'll uncover it. I sat in his conference room, surrounded by shelves of legal books, watching my cousin work with the same laser focus I remembered from childhood. Back then, he used it on engines in grandfather's shop. Now, it was aimed at legal combat. I've also hired Morrison Investigative Services, Alex went on. They trace hidden assets and track infidelity. Their team has ex-cops and forensic accountants who find things most lawyers miss. Within 10 days, his investigators found a secret credit card tied to our joint account, a card I never approved, showing monthly charges going back nearly 2 years. The pattern is telling, Alex said, laying out the statements. Fancy restaurants, weekend hotels, pricey jewelry, all on nights she told you she was working late or at company functions. The charges drew a clear picture of deceit. But Alex pushed further. His team started talking to Linda's coworkers, friends, and online contacts under the cover of routine divorce checks. Your wife has been sloppy, Alex noted with grim satisfaction. Several witnesses confirmed her affair with Kevin Thompson, a Boulder real estate developer who builds luxury homes. Kevin was everything I wasn't: wealthy, well-connected, polished, the type Linda clearly craved. Investigators pieced their relationship together through receipts, social media, and accounts from people they both knew. They've been planning this split for more than 18 months, Alex said, his tone sharp and cold. Kevin has been guiding Linda on dividing assets, suggesting lawyers, even studying Colorado law with her to maximize her payout. The worst evidence came from Linda's own digital trail. Alex's team got her phone and email records, exposing months of messages with Kevin about their future and how to bleed the marriage dry. Here's a text from 4 months ago, Alex read. Linda, Mike has no idea. He's so trusting. He'll just sign whatever I hand him. Kevin, make sure you get the house and alimony. Guys like him never fight back because they can't afford real lawyers. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a calculated 2-year mission to strip me of everything while she secured a smooth move into Kevin's world. We've also tracked about $85,000 moved from your joint accounts into secret ones she set up, Alex said, pointing at highlighted bank records. That money funded her affair, trips, clothes, even a down payment on a Mercedes in her maiden name. Hamilton and his team were blindsided. They thought I'd show up with a low-cost lawyer who'd cave to Linda's demands. Instead, they faced Alex, armed with resources, skill, and personal drive to expose everything. Hamilton asked for a settlement talk yesterday, Alex told me with a smirk. Linda's nervous about how deep we're digging. I told him we'd consider it once we finish reviewing her fraud and lies. The stress was wearing Linda down. Friends said she looked thinner, worn out, always on edge. Kevin, meanwhile, began backing away as the spotlight threatened his reputation and business. The final court date felt like the end of a legal drama. Hamilton looked knockin', like a soldier who discovered too late that his weapons didn't work. Alex had torn apart every claim Linda made, replacing her sufferer act with proof of fraud. Your Honor, Alex said with calm authority, the evidence shows Mrs. Rodriguez committed perjury in her filings, carried out financial fraud during the marriage, and conspired with her partner to steal marital assets through deception. Linda sat pale and shaking beside Hamilton. The stylish suit couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes or her trembling hands. The exposure of her 2-year scheme had stripped away her arrogance. Furthermore, Alex added, lifting a thick folder, we have proof of about $85,000 in secret transfers to accounts she opened without my client's consent. These funds were used to support an affair and prepare for her plan to abandon the marriage. Hamilton's objections were weak and scattered. Every paper Alex showed was verified, every dollar traced, every witness confirmed. Linda's affair with Kevin had been laid out in detail. Credit card charges, hotel logs, social media posts, and witness statements all drew a full picture of planned betrayal. The defense respectfully requests, Alex said with exacting calm, that the plaintiff's property claims be dismissed, that she repay the $85,000 she misused, and that all spousal support requests be permanently denied based on her infidelity and financial misconduct. Judge Peterson studied the file with the steady focus of someone who had seen too many divorce cases to be fooled. The evidence was heavy, the financial misuse clear, and Linda's credibility ruined by her own messages with Kevin. Mrs. Rodriguez, the judge said, looking straight at her, do you have any response to these charges of perjury and fraud? Linda glanced at her lawyer, Hamilton, but he only shook his head. The case against her was airtight. No, Your Honor, she whispered, her voice barely carrying. The court finds that Mrs. Rodriguez committed perjury in her initial filings and engaged in fraud against the marital estate, Judge Peterson declared. Her claims for property division are denied. She is ordered to return $85,000 within 90 days. All spousal support requests are permanently dismissed. The gavel struck, and Linda's legal strategy collapsed. Outside the courthouse, her defeat grew worse. Kevin cut all contact once he saw the risk of legal fallout and public shame. He won't return my calls, she admitted to a friend, not knowing Alex's investigators were still listening. He says being linked to me could hurt his business, and that he has to protect himself. The man who had coached her betrayal and promised her a new life had vanished the moment real consequences arrived. Her social circle turned cold as quickly as the courtroom had. Friends who once praised her for trading up from a mechanic's wife to a developer's partner stepped back once the truth came out. Within 6 weeks, Linda had lost the house she fought for, the alimony she counted on, the money she stole, and the rich boyfriend who had promised to replace it all. Her gamble had left her with debts, legal penalties, and a loneliness she had never imagined. 4 weeks after the divorce was finalized, Alex called me with something I never expected. Mike, I've been thinking, he said, his tone softer than I'd ever heard in court. Meet me at grandfather's old shop this Saturday. There's something I want to show you. I hadn't been near the shop on Colfax Avenue in 8 years, not since we split the business. Saturday morning, I stood outside, watching Alex unlock the same door with keys I didn't know he still had. Inside, it looked frozen in time. Grandfather's painted signs still above the workbench, tools neatly arranged, and the smell of oil and polish that reminded me of my earliest days learning engines. I never sold it, Alex said, reading my face. After the split, I kept paying the lease. Told myself it was an investment, but truth is, I couldn't let go. He walked to the corner where grandfather's 1969 Camaro SS still sat under a dusty cover, the same car we had worked on together through endless summers. I've been thinking about what you said years ago, about preserving legacy. You were right, Mike. I lost sight of what grandfather wanted us to protect. He pulled the cover off, revealing the half-restored Camaro. The engine bay looked untouched, with parts still neatly sorted and grandfather's notes taped to the bench. I want to reopen the shop, Alex said, brushing the fender with care. But this time, I want to do it right, with your mechanical skills and my business background. We could build something grandfather would truly be proud of. I looked around the shop, then at my cousin, who had just helped me take my life back from someone who tried to ruin it. What about your law practice? You've built something downtown. Alex smiled, the same look he'd worn when we solved tough engine problems as kids. I'll still take some cases, but I want most of my time here. Working with my hands, building something real, not just tearing down other people's mistakes. That afternoon, we worked on the Camaro together, slipping back into the rhythm we had before pride and money drove us apart. His legal mind and my mechanical skill opened doors we'd never considered. High-end restoration, expert testimony, consulting on classic car claims. I owe you an apology, Alex said while rinsing parts in the old washer. I was so focused on profit that I forgot what we had. This shop isn't just a business. It's grandfather's legacy, our family's story, and a craft worth preserving. Working beside him in that shop, I realized Linda's betrayal had pushed us into a reconciliation neither of us had dared to imagine. Her attempt to cut me off from family had instead brought Alex and me back together. In the end, she reminded us that family loyalty outlasts money, pride, and betrayal.